my free time doesn't mean it's available time. Like, we forget the fact that like free time means it's free for us to design what it looks like, not that it's open for people to like schedule things on, or we have to justify why it's empty. And if we have empty time, it's like bad or selfish. And I think that so often we've been trained to think we have to fill all the slots, or we could be doing more for whoever.
Welcome to Amplify with Jess Ekstrom, a show designed to help women get out of their head and into their zone of influence.
Today, we welcome one of my best friends, Kate Rosenow, who works with service-based business owners to implement the right systems and operations so they can scale their business and create consistent income without working crazy hours. Sounds awesome, right? Well, she also practices what she preaches, and she's created multiple courses so she can get that stream of income while she sleeps. We've even tapped Kate to teach a business systems course at Mic Drop called Build Your Speaking Business 101, where she teaches you how to basically build your own virtual assistant without needing to hire one right off the bat. To learn more and register for Kate's course, go to micdropworkshop.com/series. But one of my favorite conversations to have with Kate is around balancing business and motherhood.
It's so funny because I was so good at systems in my business when I, didn't have kids or before I was pregnant. And then once I got pregnant, I was like, oh, well, I like everything, like T's are crossed, I's are dotted. Like I have everything ready in my business to have a kid. I didn't even think about the fact that I might want to go back to work more quickly. And I need that same level of systemization and planning in my personal life, because you become like the CEO of your household in a different way whenever you have a kid, where it's like there's so much planning and coordination, and at least on my end, like more so than in my business. And it required a level of conversations that I'm used to in business, but not in my personal life. Like before you have a kid, there's a level of independence where it's like, I don't have to check in with people to do things. I can kind of like eat what I want, sleep what I want. Like you can kind of make your schedule on your own. But when you don't have that and you have a kid in the mix, like the systems become so important at home. So regardless of like what level you want, like maybe you want to spend like, 50-50 in your business and then like sometime at home, like everyone has to have some type of system in both areas to make it work. So like, and when I talk about systems, I think so often that feels like such a foreign concept to people, but really a system is just like a process or a set of steps to get to a certain thing. So like something as simple as like dinner. It's like we think like, okay, who's going to be in charge of dinner? We don't think about like grocery shopping, meal planning, taking into account dietary restrictions, like is the food going to spoil? Like there's so many elements of that we have to think about beforehand that like systems become so helpful for and reduce that mental load for whoever is in charge of doing it. This doesn't just apply to women, but men and women. I think ultimately like that level of systems that we put into our business and like standard operating procedure should be also reflected in our personal life.
So when you had Harry, what was, I guess, more of a shock for you, like the way that you approached now your personal life or the way that you approached your business? Like what were some of the biggest changes?
I think both felt like very big changes. I think everyone I had spoken to previously talked about, preparing to allow yourself a lot of time at home. So like preparing for maternity leave and like preparing to be out of your business for a long time. And so I had planned to really be out of my business for like, I could have been out 4 to 6 months. Like I had a plan for that. And then I remember like week 2 postpartum, I'm like sitting on the couch watching Grace and Frankie. And I'm like, this kid is just sleeping. Like they're sleeping most of the day when they're not eating. And my mind just needed a different level of stimulation. And I went back to work super quickly. And I remember even the response from people when I would go into Zoom calls, they're like, oh my God, you're back already? You're like, you don't need to be here. And I'm like, no, like I'm going to do what feels right for me. And I appreciate the, permission that you're giving me to take off, but stimulating my brain actually makes me a better mom. And when I come back to those situations where you have to feed or you have to like do something that feels a little more, at least for me, like mundane, like you've had the stimulation mentally that like makes that not as stressful. At least for me, I felt like it was really stressful.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to this woman yesterday, Sarah Wells. She's like this amazing speaker. She's an Olympic hurdler. I'm like casual. I can't even like step over a shoe. But I had met her when she was 7 months pregnant, and she's a speaker, and she's like, I have a gig that is a month after I give birth, and I want to do it, but I have no idea like if I should or how I should be feeling. And I was like, I will just share from my personal postpartum experience is that I turned down like really gigs that were 3 months after Ellie was born. And I feel like on one hand, any moment with my kids is never like a moment that I regret or
Totally.
waste. However, I felt like my mental health suffered a bit from the boundary that I created between myself and work, where like the longer you don't do something, the more you wonder, I'm like, am I still good at this?
Yeah.
And so for something like speaking, for me, I'm taking it differently this time around where, I do have a gig a month and a couple days afterwards, because it's something that is like in and out. You can do it. You're not like back. If I had to create a new talk, absolutely not. But
Right.
if I can get back on the bicycle and remind myself who I am.
Yeah.
And I heard someone, I can't remember who it was, refer to it as like putting breadcrumbs out for yourself postpartum. It's like, how can you remind yourself who you are?
Totally.
Knowing that you're also like evolving into a different person.
Yeah.
But also it's so easy to think my job is now to feed and rock and put this, it's an identity crisis.
I'm so glad you said the word job, because I think so often we think like, oh, I get to do this thing at home. And it is a privilege to be able to be home with your kids. And also it's a lot of work. And I think with anything, like we would never in any other context in our life be like, oh yeah, you should want to do this 24/7. Like, why don't you want to work around the clock and like wake up at 3 a.m. to answer an email? Or like,
why are you not chipper and jumping out of bed? Yeah.
And like even with any other relationship, like your relationship with your kid is so special, but even like your spouse or like maybe your family members, you don't even want to be with them 24/7. And so
Jake and Cam can attest to that.
I was about to say, like, everyone needs a little breather, a little break. And so I think that we, for some reason, feel like motherhood is excluded from that like set of rules and experiences that like doing anything all day, every day is exhausting, even if it feels mundane and small and or it feels simple and easy. And so I love what you said about the fact that you can like kind of, put breadcrumbs out or like go in and go out of speaking, because I don't think people realize how much like going and having that experience is beneficial for your home life. And you come back, at least I would always come back after like a call or having like solved a problem for a client or, coming back from speaking or at a gig, you get this different sense of accomplishment. And then you come back and there's some newness, some excitement. And I think we all thrive off of having a little bit of a like change in our schedule and like pivotal moments in our day. And so I've just seen it so often that, people come back and they have this refreshed sense of motherhood. And I think it's Casey Davis who says this all the time. She's like, the best thing you can do for your kid is for them to have a happy mom. And I think it's like doing what you need to do to be happy. She was speaking specifically about like sleep training, I think. And she was like, for folks where if they're waking up in the middle of the night, they're doing it, but then they're like totally upset all day, or like they feel it, or it's clear to like their kids that they're not enjoying themselves. Like in my mind, that's more detrimental than, like whatever you think you're sacrificing for your kid by doing this like martyrdom of motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I feel like I've learned most from our friendship over the years, even outside of motherhood, but I think that has become increasingly more important in motherhood, is boundaries. And the way that you approach business and systems is also a means for you to apply boundaries for yourself. And I had never been like, my connotation around people who were like, I don't have time, or that's not my rate. Before meeting you, it was like, that must be such a hard conversation to have. That's got to ruin a relationship. And you go about it in a way that is like so clean and crisp, where people can walk away from you being rejected and still be like, I freaking love Kate. And I just was like watching you do that. And I'm like, how does she do this? And I feel like just going back to this theme of motherhood, which I didn't realize would be the theme of this episode, it took me having a baby to be unapologetic and guilt-free about setting boundaries, because I know anytime I'm spending time doing something I don't want to do or isn't making my family wealthier in some way is time that I'm not spending with my kids. And on one hand, I'm like, oh, great. I'm so glad that I've reached this point in my life. On the other hand, I'm like, why did it take me having a kid, or it shouldn't take other women having a kid, to be able to unapologetically set boundaries in their life?
1,000%. And I think so often before someone maybe has a family, or if they don't want a family, we feel like we have to justify having quote unquote free time. And I think that is such a disservice to just people in general. There's someone that says a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like, my free time doesn't mean it's available time. Like, we forget the fact that like free time means it's free for us to design what it looks like, not that it's open for people to like schedule things on, or we have to justify why it's empty. And if we have empty time, it's like bad or selfish. And I think that so often we've been trained to think we have to fill all the slots, or we could be doing more for whoever. And like you said, I think a kid is a great way to like shift that paradigm. But also, even if you don't have a kid, it's like, well, what are the bigger priorities in your life? Is it travel? Is it, like home renovations? Is it a hobby? And I think when we don't put that on our calendar the way that like feeding a child has to be on our calendar, we allow for other people's agenda to kind of circumvent that, and to say like, oh, well, this isn't as important, or it's not as big of a deal. And then we have to reset and say like, well, why did I become a business owner in the first place? Or why did I become a speaker? It was so that I could like have some flexibility and travel and be able to like live life the way I want. Well, if you're constantly on your phone, or like running through the airport, or like stressed out constantly about work, what's the point? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
What's all this for? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What was our motto a couple years ago that we said? We're like, if it's not fun, then we're not doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I still stand by that.
Yeah. And again, it's a privilege where you can get to a point in your business where you have the choice of what to say yes to and what to say no to. Yeah. And I feel like so lucky now in my business to where if there's someone that's just not nice, like, I don't have to work with you. Or if there is something that demands too much of a part of me that I'm not really willing to give at this point, then I can say no. If there's a speaking engagement that either isn't meeting my fee or maybe isn't the right audience for me, like, I used to just grip any opportunity that came in my inbox like it was going to be the last one. And I think I don't know if it's because my priorities have changed or the mindset around abundance has changed, but it's just like knowing that there's going to be something else. And sometimes you don't even know what it is, but there will be something else.
1,000%. I'm a big fan of like, make that money, get that bread, like do what you got to do to like be successful financially. But I think something that we don't think about often, and I'll use the same example of speaking, is like, if I get booked out with gigs that I don't like or that aren't meeting my rate, I'm not leaving any room for gigs that would meet my rate or that are good for me. Yeah. And I see it all the time. And I see it across industry where it's like, if you're a graphic designer and you have all these websites that you hate doing, well, you've not left any room to market to the people that would be a better fit, or, go have coffee conversations with the people you think have a better fit. Like, I sacrificed a lot of immediate revenue, immediate money for chasing the clients who I knew would be totally fine with me going on maternity leave, are totally fine with me structuring my business around my life. And so I think we don't realize like the opportunity cost of taking a bunch of gigs that are like free, but they promise that it would be exposure, or like it's $1,000, but then they will also like shout me out on social media. It's like, okay, now I've spent so much time in dialogue with this person who's not a good fit and clearly doesn't respect me or value me. I could be in dialogue with Oprah Winfrey. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you could be having conversations in a different place. And I think it's weird how our brains work. We'll put this emphasis on conversations around like gigs or projects or opportunities or potential clients, but we don't put that same emphasis on being proactive about
chasing what we want to get,
showing up on social media in the way that you want. And the reason you don't have time to record those reels or to send out those networking emails that would actually get you the things you like is because you're busy taking shitty gigs.
Yes. And you're fulfilling the things that you don't want to do.
Exactly.
Like people ask me like, well, why don't you coach? You could make so much more money doing like coaching and one-on-one. There's so many people that would work with you. And it's like, because that time on my calendar is going to be blocked and I could do this in a much more scalable way. Like we do at Mic Drop Workshop or Mic Drop Academy. And I know that you're the same way with like everything that you have going on. It's like, well, yeah, I could do this thing that could make me quick revenue, but what is the long-term goal? And I think honestly, going back to being a mom and being a parent taught me so much about the prioritization around like scale and time and presence.
Yeah.
Does it require me to be there? Does it require me to get on a plane? How many people can I reach with 1 hour of my time? Like all of those things became important when they should have been important 5 years ago, when they should have been important before I didn't have even a paying gig, is to start thinking about your scale, valuing your time and your presence.
Yep.
And I want to hit on the exposure part. And then I also want to get into some of the tactics around systems. But, the exposure piece is so interesting because no one talks about that there is a threshold to exposure.
Yeah.
I encourage women in Mic Drop who are just getting started. Yeah, speak for free. Yeah, speak in exchange for footage. Speak in exchange for introductions. And then there will be a point in your career where that's no longer serving you.
Yep.
And you have to be aware of when that is.
Totally.
But people don't really talk about that shift. And when it is okay to say, no, the currency I value right now is not the referrals, the footage, the testimonials. It is the fee for what I do because I now know that I have the track record.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's funny when you talked about the boundaries and it's like, how do we make people feel like I'm not saying no to them or like, pissing them off? The language I would almost always use is like, my priority in my business right now is X. So like, for example, Jess might say, thank you so much for reaching out. My priority right now is selling my new book. I, just put out this book. I think it's going to be like a great opportunity. Let's talk about a way to get the book in the hands of all the people in the audience or something like that. And so I'm saying no to the initial offer, but maybe I'm being generous in a different way.
Yeah.
And so you can say like, no, the exposure is not going to work for me, but maybe we can structure it this way, or maybe we can find a company to sponsor my talk, or like, let's get creative with what we're then pivoting to, because it's very rare that I just say no. In fact, this morning I got an email from a brand that said, we would want to do this and we want to do it in exchange for XYZ. And one of the things was like 2 emails on your email list. I was like, I'm not actually comfortable sending 2 emails dedicated to your software, but I'm totally fine putting you all on my list of resources that are some of my favorites. And so I think so often we don't realize that there's always room for negotiation.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be like negotiation, like mobster style, where you're like sliding a paper across or like have these like crazy feuds. It's like, let's talk about a win-win that works for us.
And tell me telling them what your yes is. I don't know why this took me so long. I'm just like, I was trying to be polite. I was trying to be easy. Can we, swim over here? Can we talk about this? Instead of being like, this is what would make it a yes for me.
Yep.
Would this work for you? And being clear.
Yeah.
Before we wrap, I want to talk about just systems tips for home and work, whether that's a speaker, we have your course, Building Your Speaking Business 101. You can go to micdropworkshop.com/series.
Check it out.
To get it.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing. It's if you're not in a place where you even want to hire a VA or all of these kind of external things right now, you so clearly show almost how to build a team without building a team.
I want to touch on something you said earlier that I think relates to this specific part so clearly, where it's like the time we're investing in like bad gigs or whatever, we're not investing in good gigs. The same thing goes with your business. Like if you are a speaker, you are also a CEO. You are also like running the business of speaking. And when you don't take the time to build the systems, to build the foundation, you get stuck in the admin constantly. You get stuck in the sending one-off contracts or sending one-off invoices, or did that client even pay? I see it a lot with my clients who are speakers where it's like, I don't know if they paid the second half of that invoice. I don't know if I know where I'm supposed to show up. Oh, it's an hour before the gig and I didn't realize I flew here to actually speak about something different than I thought I was going to be speaking about. Like I've seen it run the gamut.
Yeah.
And so, building systems feels like a burden, and it is. But it has such a long-term payoff that if you don't do it in the beginning, it only gets harder to do.
Yes.
And so I think people don't realize when we're thinking about where to spend our time, like, yes, nurture your leads and like get gigs that are right for you. But if you're not setting up a seamless process to engage with those people that are hiring you to speak, that is such a professional experience that they want to see from you. And so if you set that up and kind of take your quote unquote business seriously, and make sure those systems are created, like that ultimately is going to lead to many more gigs, a lot less time and friction in the admin piece of it. And that time that you invested putting those systems in will pale in comparison to like years of things being like so easy, 2 clicks.
Yes. And for me, it's like going to the dentist. Like, I know I don't want to do it. I know you geek out over systems and you love it.
I love the dentist.
Yes. But I know that if I just like if I set this like automation or this welcome series or something up now, then it's going to save me a lot in the future. So can you give us just a couple takeaways of like how you systemize your home and maybe a tip for systemizing your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything in personal or business that is a recurring task, meaning like you have to do it more than once, should be systematized in some way. Systems don't always equal automation. It's not always like, oh, a robot has to do this now, or it's like so like, sterile and like devoid of any personality.
Yeah.
Like a system can be like, hey, every Wednesday we order out. And every Sunday we do laundry. Because what happens when you have that type of system, or, my husband's in charge of, this is actually mine, my husband's in charge of folding, I'm in charge of putting away. And so there's never going to be a time where I'm like, I really wish he'd put his clothes away. It's like, no, that's mine.
That's me.
Like when we call our tasks and responsibilities, it becomes so much easier. And if I know laundry is Sunday, I don't spend Monday through Saturday thinking like, well, should I do laundry this morning or tomorrow? Or like, what if I don't get the laundry done? It's like, I now have mentally cleared it because we have a system.
Is gone.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like for me, grocery delivery, like so many of these things have been automated, whether it's like dry cleaning, laundry, and a lot of the rebuttals I get is like, oh, that's an added expense. It's more expensive. For me, my billable rate is much more expensive than Instacart. And so if I'm saving an hour, putting my kid in the car seat, going down the aisles, maybe I missed the shopping list, or, maybe there's nowhere to park when I go there, like grocery shopping for me used to be like a 2-hour endeavor,
right.
Like it's a lot when you're taking a kid there. And so would I rather pay someone $90 a year, like less than $1 a day, to not have to worry about that anymore? Yeah, absolutely. Like we don't think about the cost benefit analysis enough.
And what you said, my billable rate,
yes.
Like what is the value of your time?
Yeah.
And you could do it. You could go to the grocery store. You could, whatever it is, or you could hire it out or delegate.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Again, realizing like what are the things you do repeatedly and what are the things that take your most of your time. Mm-hmm. And then my favorite quote from you is the best use of your time is doing the thing that you do best. Like
1,000%.
That I like tattoo on the bottom of my eyelids. Whenever I'm like tinkering with a design in Canva, I'm like, I am not as design. Like no one, this is not me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the same goes with like cleaning your house, right? It's like, I could do it. Or someone who's going to make this place spotless and I'm going to be thrilled about it could do it, and I'm going to pay for my mental health.
Yes.
Like, I think a running joke I've always had with you is like, we pay TaskRabbit so that we don't have to pay for marriage counseling. Like, we joke that it's like, it's cheaper to have a handyman come in and hang up all the pictures, because that's $100, and us fighting over the fact that the pictures aren't level is going to be $250 in a counseling session. So like, let's make the investment in someone doing it, and we can just be happy and content with each other. The same happens in your business though. And I don't think people realize enough, like, you don't have to be the accountant and the lawyer and the marketing expert and the, content creator and the person who is constantly doing the data analytics and operations. Like, you can be strategic about the systems you implement and then the people you hire to do it. But I have to say, like, hiring before you put your systems in place, like before you purchase this course with Jess, to me is a huge mistake, because when you hire people, you don't realize, like, even if they're an expert, they come out and say like, okay, Jess, what do you want me to do?
Right.
Okay, Jess, how do you want me to run this? And you need to have a process already ready for them to take over, because it's not their responsibility to steer the ship of your company.
Yes.
If you are hiring a virtual assistant or a business manager or someone to like get speaking gigs for you, and you are not giving them clear direction or processes for how to do that, you're not doing your job. And so to not put these processes in place is doing a disservice and frankly wasting money on outsourcing, because you're not giving them the tools they need to be successful.
Yes. And when our immediate reaction is to solve problems with people instead of taking the problem in ourselves and then adding people. Yeah. That is a lesson that took me way too long to learn.
Totally.
But go get Kate's course, micdropworkshop.com/series, Build Your Speaking Business 101. If you're not ready to hire, if you're wanting to put these systems in place first, it's a great place to start. Yeah. Where else can people find you and work with you?
Yeah, I am most active on Instagram at Work Well with Kate, and then you can find me at workwellwithkate.com. There's lots of resources, tools, and templates that you can get to help you grow your business.
Or you can find us at any local coffee shop.
Come to Raleigh, walk into any coffee shop, and you'll see us there.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Amplify. If you are a fan of the show, show us some podcast love by giving us a rating and review. And give us a follow at Mic Drop Workshop and at Jess Ekstrom. This episode was edited and produced by Earfluence, and I'm Jess Ekstrom, your host. Remember that you deserve the biggest stage, so let's find out how to get you there. I'll see you again soon.